Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome once again to In Defense of the Hays Code. I am your host, Ellis Womack. This is my co-host, Zach Anderson. And if Zach's apparel, which I don't know if you can see yet or not, is not obvious, we will be covering another Bogey film.
That's right. And I feel like he deserved the apparel of a fedora and a jacket, at least a jacket. At least a jacket. I may not do this every time, but whenever we go with Humphrey Bogart, just because he's one of my favorites, and if you are watching this channel, he's probably one of your favorites too, just by the fact that you're watching old movie channel. Yeah, he's one of the best.
I think he, besides William Powell and Myrna Loy, he's the one we've talked about the most, and we will be continuing that trend today. The last time we spoke on him, he was playing second fiddle to James Cagney in The Roaring Twenties, but this time he is in the driver's seat again as we cover Key Largo.
That is correct. So Key Largo is one that I am not as familiar with. I have seen it a couple times. I rewatched it last night to make sure I was up on it, because I remembered the premise of the movie, but there was key parts such as the conclusion that I had completely forgot. I was like, what happened at the end? Okay, I feel like I should watch it to at least know that. But yeah, another home run. And you said that Bogart is in the driver's seat, and that's true. But let's talk. I would like to hear you talk about the cast first of all, because this is a stellar cast.
It is finally time. I have alluded to him before in the past, talking about James Cagney, but for the first time on this channel, we get to talk about Mr. Eddie G. Robinson.
Yes,
the man
that's right.
himself. For those of you who don't know who he is or need a refresher, Eddie G. Robinson was another of the big-time gangster actors in the 30s. I would say he was parallel to Cagney, but where Cagney tended to play a lot of like Irish gangsters. If you needed somebody to play somebody who was Capone without saying he was Capone, you got Eddie G. Robinson. And like in this, he's clearly playing a Capone, a copy in the form of Johnny Rocco, but he does so good in this movie.
Oh yeah, he's so interesting. His character's so interesting. And so yeah, that's so go ahead with the as far as the cast goes, because yeah, I will jump into the characters if I don't just shut up and let you talk about the cast for a second. I mean, everybody is perfectly cast, and I just enjoyed it.
And, of course, talking about first-time introductions to the channel, in some people's eyes, who is Bogey without Bacall? And this is the first episode, the first movie we've covered that has starred Lauren Bacall. This was not their first film together. This was either the second or the third. Pretty sure it was the third. Maybe might have been the fourth. Anywho, they in real life, they were married. They ended up, I think by this point they were married, and they remained married up until he died in 1950 something or other. She does such a good job in this movie,
Yeah, she does not. She doesn't lose when it comes to roles, and this is again one of those that feels understated, but if somebody else did it, it just wouldn't be right.
No. Yeah, see, I keep wanting to jump into scenes too because there's just
Right.
um
We can. I was just saying that
yeah,
I want
yeah.
you to like touch on at least
'Cause
the cast.
I was just gonna say the scene where she spits in his eye is just
Oh, yes.
but and then
Yeah.
to round out the principal cast is someone we've covered on here before, but who is playing a radically different role than he was last time, and that is Lionel Barrymore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very different.
Last time on the channel, in fact, the channel's inaugural episode, we talked about Lionel Barrymore in the role of Mr. Potter. In this, he's playing Lauren Bacall's character's father and playing just a completely different role, but just yeah, without trying to like jump into the plot too much right away. He just does such a good job of, even though he's in a wheelchair, because in real life Lionel Barrymore at this point, was in a wheelchair. Had
Oh,
been,
for real, he was.
yes.
Oh, okay. Didn't know that.
Yeah. Anytime you see him in a wheelchair, like even on crutches, it's because it was arthritis or something.
Yeah.
He done something, and he had to have that wheelchair.
Okay.
Um, he just does a job standing up to the gangsters.
Yeah. I mean, he's an admirable, um, decent man
Mhm.
surrounded by those who are not.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we'll talk about some of his scenes too.
Mhm.
But
Um, I mean, in the side actors, who I can't think of anyone that jumps out at me, but it's been a hot minute. Like you said, everyone in this movie was perfectly cast.
yeah. 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 Uh the cop who, you know, um is you don't see for a lot of the movie, and then you realize that uh that the gangsters had roughed him up a bit. Um he's he's a great, like, you would want to know more of his backstory, just the type of cop he is. And he's just a good guy,
Mm-hmm.
a clear good guy. And there's parts where Bogart's character, you're not sure where he stands, as far as like, is he gonna be fearless, is he gonna be cowardly? Like, it's kind of confusing, maybe
Mm-hmm.
both. um but yeah, this guy, yeah, he doesn't compromise, and is just a cool character. All the mobsters are fun. I really like the mobster who is reading the funny papers and just gets tickled and starts laughing. He's a mobster,
Mm-hmm.
and then the other mobster makes fun of him. He's like, he goes from laughing to just like deadpan, like, oh, a wise guy. So usually when I hear the term wise guy, I think of the Three Stooges.
Mm-hmm.
But this is a different tone of wise guy. This is like the wise guy lingo, where it's like, oh, you think you're better.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you've got it all figured out. It was pretty just I don't want to use the word intimidating where it wasn't. It was not intimidating. It was just he was mad.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, he stood out. All of the gangsters are fun. Um, with with uh with the Capone esque character
Mm-hmm.
clearly being the leader of them. All the rest are just great. Uh, his gang makes sense. Like the way that they cast it, the way that they act. You can tell he's got a close knit group of little followers that uh, listen to him. Like he speaks, they listen. That's even a quote from the movie.
Yeah. I love because there's a conversation that I think it starts out between the gangsters and then gets repeated a little while later. Them talking about they'll have to bring back prohibition, won't they? Because it's
Mm,
such an interesting thing. I mean, I'm the, I love studying the 1920s, but that was really the point, listening that because that was filmed basically at that point in time, and that's when it sort of clicked. These guys needed prohibition because that was the most power they'd ever held.
right.
To the point where I think that's sort of a theme of the movie is, showing sort of how these gangsters used to have power, used to have all this stuff, but at this point it's sort of faded away. Yeah, Johnny Rocco used to be at the top, but now he's hiding out in this, hotel down in
Yeah.
Florida.
Right.
You know,
Right.
the singer used to be somebody, but now she's a lush. You know,
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, for the kids at home, what's a lush? Because they use that in the film.
a drunkard.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
it. That's it.
but
But yeah, it was just the lingo of the time.
yeah,
So yeah.
I didn't even just. But,
All right.
but I mean, you sort of you kind of get that feeling. The whole thing is oh well, I'm small time. Right now, but I will be big again. And then there's one character in this film who we haven't talked about and who I would not have thought to talk about except for right now. And that's the hurricane.
Now that's a character.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Because I mean that seems kind of weird to call a character, but it just once that hurricane blows in, that's when everything starts changing.
Yes, and I love the way that they slowly introduce that character by hearing reports about it.
Mm-hmm.
You know it's on its way. Rocco is uninterested, not phased by it at all. He's telling people who are concerned about the weather, no, it's gonna be fine. Come on
Mm-hmm.
down, or the deal's off.
Yeah.
He's just like, let's go. There's nothing to worry about. Let's just business as usual. And then it just continues to become more of a part of the story.
Mm-hmm. There's a scene later in the film, and I don't think this is spoilers. This is just, I think, my favorite scene in the whole film. The hurricane at this point has shown up and showed out, and they're all sort of huddled in that little area. And I don't know if it blows the shutters or if there's a crack of thunder. There's something that makes a lot of noise, and you see Rocco whip around with his pistol.
Mm,
And Bogey, who has just been sitting there the entire time, being, like you said, kind of not going to interfere, not going to get involved, not going to stick his neck out.
mm-hmm.
Says, yeah, that's right. Yeah, Rocco, show it your pistol. Why don't you shoot at it? Show it who's boss. And it's such a satisfying scene.
Yeah, he cuts him down. He did in a way, that Bogart is specifically skilled at. There's other actors that have done it, but when he does it, and with his voice, everybody knows his voice.
Yeah.
And his calmness, and he's like, yeah, go ahead. Yeah, just shoot at it. Show us who's boss. he could not intimidate Mr. Hurricane.
No.
Whereas most everybody else, yeah, he absolutely could. He could threaten them, he could hurt them, he could shoot them. Whatever the case was, there was no amount of violence that he could threaten because hurricanes don't get threatened.
No. No.
I thought it was interesting. What was so Lauren Bacall's father
Mm-hmm.
was like such a good guy.
Mm-hmm.
He was looking out for the American Indians. They all trusted him. Like whenever there was a hurricane, they would all come to his big hotel, and even he would uh, help them out as far as like the law goes. Like
Yeah.
there's a lot of moving parts in this movie when you can get focused just on, okay, there's gangsters and then there's a hurricane, but there's
Yeah.
so many moving parts that it's really enjoyable um to watch a few times,
Hmm.
just because like with most of the movies of that time, it's very easy to miss stuff. It's subtleties, um the dialogue, like everything they say means something.
Well, like it took me two or three times watching to realize that, the scene when they're getting ready for the hurricane and you see Lauren Bacall's character walk up and shut the windows.
Mm-hmm.
You don't see sunlight again until the tail end of the movie where she opens the windows and the sun just comes blaring back in, and it's such a
Really?
Mhm.
Okay. Yeah, see, yeah, I I liked the ending of this movie
Mhm.
very much. Um and we're not going to spoil what actually
Yeah.
takes place with the characters, but yeah, there was that clear analogy of a, after all the hardships they'd been through, a ray of hope.
Mhm.
And most literal, there
Yeah.
was a ray of sunshine.
Mhm. Now,
So yeah, it was good.
you mentioned like people focusing in on like the gangsters, or so many moving parts. I've heard most of the time before I watched this movie, the main thing I'd heard about Key Largo is, oh, Bogey and Bacall's romance. Oh, it's a romance film. Oh, like you know some
Mm,
song references like Bogey and Bacall and Key Largo. To me, the romance was probably the smallest part of the picture. It was there, obviously, but it
yeah.
wasn't like
Oh,
it.
it was
Yeah.
there. But I feel like it was more that the romance was born more out of just shared trauma
Hmm.
than it's like, hey, we really like each
Yeah.
other. Um and romances can like shared traumas a lot.
Hmm.
Um but yeah, I do not see this as a love story, but I do think it has a love story in it.
Hmm.
So I guess I'm just restating
Yeah.
what you said, is that I don't know if it's the smallest part, but it's definitely not the main point of the story.
Yeah.
But then again, people love Bogey and Bacall together,
Hmm.
and so that's going to take a center
Yeah.
stage no matter what's going on around. I think that has a lot to do with their acting.
Yeah. And of course, I feel like I'm bouncing around. I do this in every episode, just hitting things as they come to me. I had a conversation, and you sort of alluded to this earlier. I had a conversation with somebody um, one time. We were talking about this movie, and he told me flat out that he thought Bogey in this film, the character he was playing, was a coward.
Hmm.
And I think that's an interesting point because it's like, to me, I don't read what he did as cowardice.
Okay.
Like, to me, I see it as, the man has been to war. He's seen all this stuff, and he knew in that instant, no matter what he did, they were
Yeah.
just going to end up getting killed.
Yeah. Yeah.
If he stuck his head up, it didn't matter if it was for the right reasons, for the wrong reasons. You know, Rocco was a ticking time bomb.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. Yeah. Johnny Rocco, and you see that progression kind of parallel the hurricane as
Mm-hmm.
well. Um, he starts out super calm, and he just gets more and more. Once you hear him talking, and you hear, like you said, how things were in the prohibition and how they're not anymore, you feel that building up. And so for and Bogart was one of the first people to recognize him as Rocco.
Hmm. Yeah.
He was like, I do know who you are. And so yeah, and he started saying like what he was known for as being a gangster and a good one, and like
Hmm.
he should be feared.
Yeah.
Um, I remember, yeah. So last night when I watched again, I was trying to remember and even trying to figure out as I was watching it, was Bogart a coward or was was he a hero?
Hmm.
And this is one of those films that I think he's really not a hero. He's really not a coward. He's just a human.
Hmm.
Um, which you usually in these older films, it was just very clear.
Yeah.
Like I mentioned, the cop. It's just clear. Um, what decision he made was based off of his convictions. Whether it was a smart decision or not, you know, the results didn't matter to him. It was about doing the right thing. And I think that there the line in the movie when Lauren Bacall is talking to Bogart about how she knows that he wants to be left out of it, but his whole life has kind of brought him to where
Yeah.
he can't stay out of it. So I hope that's not a spoiler, but that's just like he's dealing with stuff.
Yeah.
Like you said, he's back from war. He knows reality better than even the gangsters in the room, I think.
Hmm.
And so yeah, I don't think I would call him a coward, but I also don't think I would call him like a leading hero either.
Correct me if I'm wrong, because it's been a hot minute and my brain could be colluding things. At some point in the film, did Rocco mention being part of Project Underworld, or did I hallucinate that?
Project what?
It was something in World War II. He might have described it rather than named it, where the U.S. Army basically reached out to one or two of like the gangsters and had them sort of on payroll to keep watch for any German Nazi sympathizers. And I
Okay,
want to say that got referenced, but I
I
might have
don't
also made
remember.
that up. Okay,
I
never
don't
mind.
remember them referencing that. I know that from history,
Yeah, yeah.
but
Like I said, I don't know
yeah,
if I just made that up. So we'll just disregard whatever point
yeah,
I was
yeah,
going to make. But I was going to say, talking about like what Lauren Bacall said, Frank. So, the character's name is Frank McCloud. Humphrey
right,
Bogart. I got confused.
okay,
But there's a line in it talking about like, and this is why I believe him to be, if not fully a hero, then more of a hero than a coward.
yeah,
And
okay,
without talking around it to avoid spoilers as much as possible, at one point during the film, she looks at him and she goes, you know, I got letters, from, I think it was her husband who he knew, I got letters from him too. And everything that you said about him, he said about you.
yeah, yeah, right. Which they never clear up, I don't
Hmm.
think completely, but there is expressions on his face that makes you think it was one way or the other.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I think that he and um yeah, Lauren Bacall's husband
Hmm.
that we don't see in the movie.
Right.
Um, I think they were both war heroes
Hmm.
for sure, and that was something that Rocco like came up against. He was like saying, "There's your war hero. No wonder he survived
Hmm.
because he's a coward."
Yeah.
And so insinuating that if you survived in war, that then you were one of the cowards that were hiding. Of course,
Hmm.
there are people like that, but to make that statement, man, that just showed Rocco being a savage and just yeah, just cutting his legs out from under him in front of everybody. Um, and Bogart really didn't take the bait,
Yeah.
like to respond to that and be like, well, actually, I was a hero, you know.
Hmm.
Like, no, he's not gonna mess around with Rocco with like
No.
trying to prove himself. I don't know of any movie um where Bogart is the leading guy where he's
Hmm.
like, I need to prove myself to someone.
Yeah.
No.
And but circling back talking about Rocco, just I don't think I've seen a gangster in any other film that just has that sort of presence.
Mm,
And for it to just be like the presence just being his personality,
yeah.
because Eddie G. Robinson, like most actors back in the day who played gangsters, was a tiny, tiny man. He was
Oh,
like
right.
five.
Yeah.
He was 5'8", 5'5", somewhere around there.
Yeah. Yeah. He was
Um,
5 by 5.
yeah, but it's just
When you first said tiny, I was like, wait, what? But now I know
yeah,
what
no,
you're
no,
talking
no,
about.
yeah. He's
Yeah.
short.
Short. Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, no, I said tiny, and my brain with Alice probably not the best. But
Yeah. Yeah. No, but I know. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. And his personality
mhm,
was gangster boss level.
mhm. To the point where like the hurricane is finally what sort of sent his sanity on its merry little way. But really, I think it was the fact that he came up against these people who each in their own individual way could not be moved, could not be cowed. Even
Mm,
Bogart, who didn't Bogart's character wasn't up front, like spitting in his eye or trying to take a swing at him or anything. But at the same time, Bogart was like, "Yeah, I'm not going to like openly challenge you, but I'm also not going to move."
that's right. That's
Yeah,
right. He wasn't bending a knee like,
yeah,
oh, you're so great.
yeah,
Even when he's talking about how great of a gangster
hmm,
he was still calling him a gangster.
yeah,
I mean, he was stating facts, right? Like there was a bunch of unmovable people,
mhm.
and he had always seen himself as the unmovable or unstoppable force, you know.
and and now here he is, with this woman, spitting at him, and this crippled old man who's just like, "No, I'll stand up and fight you. I don't need
Man,
my legs."
yes. No, to me, man, he's the most gangster guy in the
Yeah,
movie.
yeah,
Um, and in all the right ways that nowadays we use the term gangsters. So
hmm,
just like
yeah,
he stood up out of his wheelchair shaking. They
hmm,
were mocking him, and he was like, "No, I'm gonna fight you. I
yeah,
don't care if I can't. I'll lose, maybe, but I'm still gonna fight." That's just gold.
hmm.
My puppy dog just came in. Hello, Posey. Good dog. You may go now.
But yeah, no, the film feels very much. I think it could be put on as a stage play and be done very well as a
Oh
stage
yeah. Oh yeah. Definitely could be a stage play.
because it's got that sort of that claustrophobic vibe to it.
It does. Yeah. Oh, that would be a really great stage play. So stage play people, y'all should do that.
Gee, if only we
Um,
knew somebody who did that.
that's true. That's true. Yeah, interesting. Interesting.
Ellis has no
Um,
ulterior motives for bringing this up. What are you talking about?
I like that when you were laughing just then.
Yeah,
I knew what you said, but probably most people watching couldn't understand a word you
yeah.
said. But yeah, it was based on a book made into a movie.
Mhm.
Um, and yeah, those kind that are a small-ish cast
Mhm.
focusing on, yeah, just dynamics and character rather than elaborate scenery and things like that. Yeah,
Now,
it would make for a great play. I'd watch it.
now, talking about characters, and I feel like we're neglecting her because I can't remember who played her. I could look it up, but that would not be
The
in the spirit of the
drunkard,
podcast.
the
Yes,
drunkard.
she does such a good job.
My goodness, yeah, it's kind of heartbreaking
Mm-hmm.
at certain points.
Mm-hmm.
Because like you said, like she used to be like a nightclub star
Yeah.
singer, and yet just to see how far she had fallen, um,
But
and was being mistreated.
at the same time, and it also sort of goes to show a little bit of Humphrey Bogart's character because without going into spoilers, if he hadn't, if he hadn't done that one kindness to her in the film,
Right.
the ending of the film would not have played out as it did.
Oh, it would
Without
have been,
her, the
yeah,
ending of the film would have been completely different.
absolutely. And you're right. We should not neglect talking
Yeah.
about her heroism
Mm-hmm.
or heroism.
Mm-hmm. Because
Um,
yeah.
heroinism? No, that's not it. That that sounds like a drug. Um, but yeah, she was serious ab- about her. She had an addiction,
Mhm.
and Bogart still had compassion.
Right.
So without getting into the details of that, if you watch the movie or have watched the movie, you know what we're talking about. And even just him showing that compassion was challenging Rocco,
Mm-hmm.
because Rocco was like, no, no, we're not. We've decided not to have compassion on you.
Yeah. So
And it was like, oof,
yeah. So while I wouldn't, I, yeah, Bogart was not in this was not a barrel chested hero, coming in and punching out the bad guys, doing all the stuff. But I just the subtle ways that he just basically told Rocco, yeah, I'm not dumb enough to, you know, to mouth off and get shot, but
mm,
I'm also not just gonna roll over and play dead.
sure, yeah, yeah. He was a decent man,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that decent men are even wise about when they have to resort to violence.
Right.
Um, Whereas in some movies, yeah, there's the Indiana Joneses who um, are there to get the job done,
Right.
and they're punching out Nazis, and it's great. Love those characters so much, but it is cool to see someone who is kind of thinking through every step of the way, struggling with like okay, so who am I gonna be
Mm-hmm.
now that I'm back from the war? Like
Yeah.
even that aspect of it, um, because things have changed. But yeah, he was resilient. He was decent. He was resilient, and when push came to shove, he was a good guy,
Mm-hmm.
regardless of if he's, like you said, the main kind of hero that we're used to. He was. I definitely would put him in the category of one of the good guys
Yeah.
in the film. 100%.
That being said, do whether y'all consider him a hero or a coward or whatever? Well, we're not going to tell you how to think on that, but we are going to ask that you post your opinion. You know,
Absolutely.
if your opinion is different than mine, and you go, "Yeah, no, complete coward." Cool. I will get to debate you. It will be fun.
Yeah, yeah. It'd be great. Let's talk about it in the comments.
And that being said, unless you can think of anything else, I think we've covered this movie pretty
Yeah.
well. Yeah, trying to avoid another best years of our lives.
Woo! If you know, you know about that
Yeah.
film.
But so that being said, what would you rank this film? What would your rating be?
Oh yeah, yeah. Okay, so I w- I think if there was any other characters, it would be any other actors,
Hmm.
it would be a lower rating.
Hmm.
But I'm gonna give it a 9 out of 10. But it has to do with the
Oh
actors.
yeah.
If it was just the story,
Hmm.
it would probably be a 7.
Yeah.
But with who it was and how it was done and the way the lines were delivered, yeah, 9 out of 10.
Yeah, I was also going to give it 9 out of 10.
Okay.
Yeah, because like you said, the story itself is competent, but it's really the actors that drive it. You
Yeah.
know, um,
Mm-hmm.
I think like if he couldn't be Johnny Rocco because he wouldn't be Italian, but if you cast like James Cagney in the position of Eddie G. Robson, I love Cagney as an actor. He would
Sure.
not have been able to pull off that same just force of personality in that role in that way.
100%. 100%. It would have been a completely different movie. Maybe a great movie, but it wouldn't have been this movie.
Right.
And that would be a shame.
And so, with that, ladies and gentlemen, we hope you'll join us next time. I don't know if we've actually decided what we're doing next. We know we're recording next, but there's going to be some finagling and shenanigans. So I'm not going to say anything lest I stick my foot in my mouth. Not that that's the first time I've done that. And I am going to say, thank you again for joining us. And as always, I am your host, Ellis Womack. That is my co host, Zach Anderson, and I have nothing but movies and time. See you later.